On the 3rd of November, 2020, a tragic event unfolded. Some may call it a genocide and a crime against humanity. It is one of the cruelest conflicts of the century. However, it remains relatively unknown and largely unspoken of in the world today. I would like to raise awareness on this issue, which is why now we will be going in depth on what really happened during the Tigray War. In order to understand the conflict, we will have to look all the way at the Tigray region in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, where more than 9 million people were forcefully displaced, with more than 900,000 people becoming refugees. And all of that is due to the significant lack of media coverage. At first, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, was a dominant force in Ethiopian politics for nearly 3 decades. However, in 2018, a wave of anti-government protests led to the rise of a new prime minister, Abiy Ahmed, who promised sweeping reforms. After ending the war with its neighboring country, Eritrea, and winning the Nobel Prize for doing so.
To give you an award in the form of a diploma and a gold medal.
However, the relationship between Abiy Ahmed's government and the TPLF quickly went downhill. In September 2020, Tigray held regional elections in defiance of the federal government, escalating tensions. 3 months later, on November 3, 2020, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced a military offensive against the TPLF, marking the beginning of the Tigray War. The war in Tigray was characterized by intense and brutal fighting. The Ethiopian National Defense Force, along with allied Eritrean troops and regional militias, launched a series of offensives against the TPLF and its people. Both sides have been accused of committing important human rights violations. Reports of massacres, sexual violence, and starvation as a weapon of war emerged. The town of Axum witnessed one of the most horrific massacres, where hundreds of civilians were reportedly killed and executed in mass numbers by Eritrean soldiers and Abiy Ahmed's people, which we are not going to show the footage of. The conflict displaced millions, creating a desperate humanitarian crisis, as the data shown collected by UNHRC. Despite the severity of the situation, media coverage was minimal. Journalists faced restrictions, and a communication blackout in Tigray further obscured the realities on the ground. This lack of media coverage meant that many of these crimes went unreported, and the international community was slow to respond until the March of 2021. Way too late for such a big conflict, with millions killed and displaced every month. The United States and other Western nations accused Ethiopian and Eritrean forces of committing crimes against humanity. In March 2021, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken described the situation in Tigray as ethnic cleaning. The African Union and neighboring countries also called for a ceasefire and dialogue. Al Jazeera called this conflict as a genocide, while the Human Rights Watch stated that civilian structures in the town of Tigray, including hospitals, schools, factories, and businesses, were shelled, looted, and destroyed by Ethiopian federal forces and regional militias, and by Eritrean armed forces. The fighting and continued restriction on humanitarian access forced more than 2 million people to flee their homes, with thousands fleeing into Sudan, and left at least 2.3 million in need of assistance.
Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in stopping the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. However, his regime is also marked by a brutal civil war against his own region, Tigray. The Tigrayan People's Liberation Front (TPLF) was in control of the government before Abiy Ahmed's election. Despite his peace efforts with Eritrea, the conflict with Tigray persisted. Abiy Ahmed used food as a weapon against the Tigray people, exacerbating their suffering. 9 million people were displaced, and neighboring countries like Eritrea, now Ethiopia's allies, dealt with the refugee crisis. Instead of seeking a peaceful resolution, Abiy Ahmed urged countries to stop sending food and aid to Tigray, resulting in severe famine and suffering. This situation starkly contrasts with the principles of liberty and humanity. The lack of equality and freedom is evident as Ethiopia ceased its support for Tigray, leading to mass starvation and death. Approximately 200,000 people died of starvation, weakening the Tigrayan population. Villages were bombarded, lives were destroyed, highlighting the persistent struggle for freedom and human rights. The federal government of Ethiopia believes that what needs to be implemented was the attack in order to regain control of the government, since they have been controlled by the TPLF for an extended period of time, and thought that the attack will regain their control over the region. However, we believe that that's wrong, since they are starting a genocide which is happening without international eyes, since currently it is lacking international coverage, which is exactly what they need. Therefore, we believe that we will need more media coverage in order to bring people to the conflict.
The Tigray War might as well have been a genocide, according to many human rights organizations and governments. And a genocide like this cannot be easily forgotten. However, not many people even knew about this conflict in the first place, and it was due to the lack of media coverage. We interviewed people to ask them about whether they know about this conflict at all, and these are their responses. So who are we with today? And how are you? Are you informed or do you even know about the Tigray conflict in Ethiopia? Thank you. So who are we with today?
I'm Leo.
How are you?
Very good.
I was wondering, have you ever heard about the genocide in Tigray?
No.
Thank you. As we can see, most people did not know about what happened in Tigray, which is why today we advocate for better media coverage. The international community must learn from this conflict and to know how to have a better response to conflicts like these. And today we advocate for better media coverage, so this way people can actually know the truth, and this way we can prevent a genocide like this to happen again. We can save so many lives and stop having these people suffer so much. Thank you. Raise your voice today and stop a conflict like this from happening again.